In a stunning twist of fate, the G7 summit in Alberta faced a seismic shift when U.S. President Donald Trump abruptly left the table, opening doors for Canada to assert itself on the global stage. In mere moments, Canada moved to fill the diplomatic void, as Prime Minister Mark Carney spearheaded initiatives that would change the landscape of international relations. He inked a groundbreaking defense partnership with South Korea, introduced a development plan worth $544 million for Latin America, and crafted a critical minerals alliance that reshaped the Europe-Asia supply chain. Carney boldly stated, "Nostalgia is not a strategy," emphasizing the fractures appearing in the established Washington-centered order. Was this summit truly a pivotal moment for Canada, positioning itself as a new center of global power? Or did it portend a broader disarray that might engulf the world? Let's delve deep into these pivotal developments. As the summit progressed, Canada seized the moment. The absence of U.S. authority left a vacuum, and within the final hours, the Canadian team expertly maneuvered three major agenda points: defense collaboration, global development financing, and securing vital raw materials. Carney's assertion of a new geometry of working together wasn't merely a fleeting remark. It signaled a profound realization that the once unshakable U.S. dominance within the G7 was beginning to fade. A highlight emerged during a meeting with South Korea's newly elected president, Lee Young. In his first public appearance since taking office on June 3, Lee revealed a radical reformation of his nation's foreign policy, committing to zero problems, maximum trade. The two leaders agreed on transforming their long-standing LNG trade into an integrated defense partnership, producing advanced surveillance technologies for Canadian military needs in exchange for South Korea's naval developments. This agreement not only tied South Korea closer into defense strategies previously dominated by the U.S. but also opened avenues for Lee Young to establish critical supply lines to Europe. Yet, whispers soon spread among delegates that American officials were sidelined, left to watch as Canada's diplomatic prowess stole the show. Later that same day, a surprising development unfolded as Canada unveiled its intentions in foreign aid. Minister Miriam Sini announced a significant investment, $544 million in guarantees aimed at reducing poverty and bolstering climate resilience in Latin America and the Caribbean. This came at a crucial time, coinciding with the U.S. slashing its international aid by a staggering $60 billion, leaving many development projects in limbo. By stepping in, Canada not only filled a void but also cemented its role as a formidable global player. Carney's follow-up press conference encapsulated this notion. He tackled the prickly issue of tariffs, referencing Trump's threats and labeling the political scene as a minefield in international economics. When pressed on potential changes in U.S. tariffs, he maintained a poised stance, indicating Canada's readiness to employ diplomatic strategies, signaling to the world that Ottawa would not stand passive during tumultuous times. As discussions shifted to military support for Ukraine and discussions surrounding missile defense initiatives, Canada hinted at significant defense responsibilities, poised to shift from monitoring borders to orchestrating a comprehensive defense strategy for the Arctic. This summit unveiled a new, multifaceted approach to diplomacy and defense, where Canada stood ready to lead in unexpected ways. The stakes have never been higher, with pivotal partnerships forming, and as history unravels, it's evident that Canada's ascent could mark the dawn of an era where new alliances reinvent global strategies. What remains to be seen is whether this collaborative approach can truly withstand the trials ahead. In a historic moment that marked a shift in global power dynamics, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney and South Korean President Lee Young met on June 17. This bilateral session, which was Lee's first major diplomatic engagement since his election victory, revealed his new strategy for Korea's foreign policy centered around the principle of zero problems, maximum trade. As conversations intensified, the two leaders agreed to elevate their relationship, transitioning from a focus solely on liquefied natural gas trade to a robust partnership in defense. The final agreement came with a concise but crucial statement: South Korea will manufacture sensor packages for unmanned surveillance systems destined for Canada's Arctic operations. In return, the South Korean Navy will be granted the rights to construct 2 hybrid patrol vessels at Canada's Esquimalt shipyard in British Columbia. This move not only integrated South Korea into the esteemed defense architecture known as the Five Eyes, traditionally dominated by the United States, but also provided Lee Young with a strategic supply route to Europe amidst shifting geopolitical landscapes. Whispers circulated among G7 attendees that American diplomats were excluded from these pivotal discussions, leaving a gap previously filled by U.S. oversight. The Trump administration, preoccupied with tariffs and simplistic economic policies, could only watch as Canada took the reins in reshaping these alliances. Fast forward to the afternoon, and Ottawa unveiled a bold initiative in foreign aid. Under the banner of humanitarian support, International Development Minister Miriam Sini announced a plan to allocate $544 million in loan guarantees focused on tackling poverty, closing infrastructure gaps, and enhancing climate resilience in Latin America and the Caribbean. This announcement was laden with significance. It came at a time when U.S. financial commitments were being drastically slashed. $60 billion from the U.S. Agency for International Development was on the chopping block, alongside the cancellation of 90% of ongoing contracts. What does this mean for the global stage? Canada is not just filling a void, it is establishing itself as a formidable player capable of leading international development initiatives. How can one country's decisive action alter the course of diplomacy and challenge long-standing superpower dynamics? In a world craving stability, could Canada's ascension signal the dawn of a new era? With the echoes of past transgressions lingering, only time will reveal whether this bold venture solidifies Canada's newfound role or plunges the world into further uncertainty as rival powers vie for influence. The future remains tantalizingly unpredictable, teetering on the edge of transformation. In the world of international diplomacy, the scene is ever-changing, where one decision can create shockwaves across the globe. Recently, a pivotal moment unfolded as the United States cut billions in aid, resulting in a power shift that allowed Canada to step boldly into the spotlight. Prime Minister Mark Carney announced a significant $544 million commitment to projects in Latin America and the Caribbean. This maneuver came at a critical time, echoing the backdrop of the U.S. scaling back its foreign aid by $60 billion, leaving vital initiatives unresolved, from malaria prevention in Africa to climate adaptation scholarships in the Pacific. Canada's timely intervention marks its rise as a serious contender on the world stage. Carney took the opportunity at a press conference to highlight the tensions simmering beneath the surface. He described Trump's proposed increase in tariffs on steel and aluminum as akin to navigating a minefield, a dangerous situation for international trade. When pressed by U.S. journalists about the possibility of those tariffs being lifted, Carney maintained a deliberate ambiguity. There may be different perspectives in other capitals, he asserted, emphasizing Canada's resolve but also hinting at a potential strategy. This careful dance of diplomacy reveals Ottawa's intent to play hardball without revealing all its cards. Carney didn't shy away from addressing the conflict in Ukraine either. He openly criticized the softened language regarding Russia's withdrawal timeline, stating, "If the text had been left to us, we would have written it more strongly." In a dramatic turn, Canada complemented its firm stance with a monumental pledge of $2.3 billion in loans to Ukraine, alongside provisions for drones, artillery, and efforts to restore energy infrastructure. Their reinvigorated commitment was not only welcomed by Ukraine but also resonated positively among European leaders. But what does all this mean for Canada's positioning? Does the shift in aid dynamics spell a rise for Canada or an impending global chaos? As uncertainties escalate, the questions deepen. What strategies will nations adopt in this new geopolitical landscape? Is Canada ready to take the reins and lead, or is this merely the beginning of a deeper crisis? The dramatic stage is set, and the world waits with bated breath. But wasn't Trump's sudden walkout just the spark that ignited a global power shift? In the last episode, we saw Canada boldly ramp up support for Ukraine, pledging an extra $2.3 billion in loans, along with unmanned aerial vehicles, howitzer ammunition, and funds to rebuild energy infrastructure. This bold package, branded as a fresh counter to Moscow's claims of Western exhaustion, drew cheers from European leaders, setting the stage for Ottawa's defiant moves. Now, picture the icy Arctic winds howling, carrying a scent of power plays and hidden agendas. What if Canada's defense gamble could redefine global skies, turning North America into a fortress against unseen threats? Did you hear the subtle murmurs in the halls, the rustle of papers as deals unfolded behind closed doors? The summit exposed a shocking rift: Canada's potential dive into the Iron Dome system, that missile shield shared with Israel, riled Trump, who scoffed it might cost $71 billion, a number that drew smirking glances from delegates. Premier Mark Carney cut through the tension, his voice steady yet laced with urgency. Our geography is no longer a natural buffer. The ballistic danger is tangible. It's not about the cash, it's about our survival strategy. He hinted it might expand NORAD's reach, those cold metallic frames of radar screens pulsing with data. Ottawa revealed, for the first time openly, plans to upgrade Arctic defense from merely watching borders to crafting layered barriers against missiles, the chill of the north feeling like an unseen enemy brushing against skin. Feel the shock tingling like static electricity in the air. Could this humiliate America's isolationist stance, exposing cracks in Washington's armor? Yet, twisting fate, not every battle raged on icy fronts. Amid the whispers of conflict, structural triumphs emerged, binding nations in rare earth alliances that smelled of industrial grit and hopeful renewal. The critical minerals pact paired Canada's endless deposits of nickel, cobalt, and rare earth elements with Germany's expert refining factories, South Korea's innovative cell pack tech, and Japan's adept recycling prowess. Ottawa aimed to swap high-purity gallium and germanium for robotic kits, boosting Ontario's battery plants, tasting the tang of reduced reliance on China's monopoly. This deal breathed life into a trust-based supply chain, distancing from Beijing's shadow with a crunch underfoot of newfound independence. Adding to the intrigue, a core pact on data sharing for AI and quantum leaps was sealed, electric and swift. Canada's Waterloo-based photonic quantum labs would probe Japan's NICT zero-energy chip prototype, a hum of innovation vibrating through labs. Tokyo, in turn, granted Ottawa elite access to its vast language models for climate simulations, the soft beep of servers echoing progress. A shared digital ethics blueprint for governance arose, setting lofty norms that sidestepped Moscow and Beijing's polarizing views, a fresh breeze clearing stale air. But here's the wrench: climate havoc, with wildfire perils, tugged at hearts. Carney, his tone raw with empathy, evoked anxious parents peering at anxious skies, mothers and fathers fretting over the weather at home. Canada still ached from those 18 million hectares scorched in 2023 summers, the acrid smoke a haunting memory. At the summit, Joint Fund sparked an AI-powered early warning for fires, the crackle of alerts potentially saving lives. Helioops launched, merging European Space Agency sensors with Japan's JAXA satellites, polar channels blending in seamless orbit. This alliance, unbound by politics, aimed for disaster shields of the future, the frost of innovation thawing global divides. And Carney's finale? A slap disguised as wisdom. 50 years back, G7 united to forge anew, not cling to old ways. Nostalgia won't guide us through change. We must transform crises into timely fixes. These words, a polite rebuke to Trump's simplistic tariffs, asked, is simplicity just camouflage for ignorance? Could Ottawa's $544 million guarantees for Latin America's wind farms, cocoa mills, and climate shields inspire private tides, filling voids where U.S. funding vanished? While not plugging the full $60 billion gap from U.S. aid cuts, this could rally capital, feeling like a firm handshake promising growth. Shifting from risky grants, Canada embraced guarantees for steady prosperity, a move Latin allies hailed as a welcome pivot, even as Washington sneered at Northern overreach, Dixit. What now torments the soul? Will Canada's maneuvers shatter U.S. dominance forever, or fuel a cascade of global anarchy? Stay tuned, imagine whispers of robots clanking in Ontario. Winds of war in Arctic realms, as power equations tilt toward chaos. Employee. The scars of 18 million hectares scorched in that blistering 2023 summer still haunt Canada's landscapes, with the acrid stench of smoldering pine lingering in the air. Parents huddle by windows, hearts pounding as thunder rolls and rain patters anxiously on glass. At the summit, leaders pledged funding for an AI-based fire early warning system, igniting hope amid the chaos. The Helioops project merges sensor data from the European Space Agency and Japan's JAXA, weaving in polar satellite channels for a bold leap forward. It's a desperate bid to shield disasters from the shifting sands of geopolitics. What if the system had been deployed that fateful August? Imagine the cool blast of wind extinguishing flames, voices calling out in relief as crackling fires dim. Carney's final words rejected the stale echoes of free market dominance. 50 years ago, the G7 united not to cling to the past, but to forge the new, he declared. Nostalgia, no, it can't guide us through this whirlwind of change. We must transform crises into timeless remedies. Those lines jabbed at Trump's mantra of simple tariffs and easy fixes. When pressed by reporters, why chant "make it simple" when hidden layers scream out? Carney shot back, complexity equals true awareness. A subtle skewer at the isolationist fray. Could this polished critique humiliate the Trump camp, exposing their simplism as a blunder? Unexpectedly, Canada's Latin America gambit stirred a swirl of doubt and delight. The program triples down on loan guarantees worth $544 million, targeting poverty slashes, infrastructure bridges, and climate shields across the Caribbean and beyond. It can't plug the $60 billion hole from USAID's pullback, but Ottawa wields it as a magnet for private capital floods. Picture fortified windmills whirring in Jamaica's trade winds, the earthy aroma of fresh cocoa wafting from Colombian labs, the hush of policy buffers softening Honduran storm roars. Historically shy of cash giveaways, Canada pivots to guarantee-led riches, nurturing growth over fleeting aid. In Washington, skeptics sneered at this northern benevolence conquest, yet Latin allies cheered the resource rainbow. What if this seeds a revolution, sidelining U.S. databanks for good? And the tremors hit multilateral giants hard. The World Bank's IDA cries for cash, IMF's climate share spark fury. Ottawa's brilliance? It amps up Canada's sway in the Advanced Economies Club, a sly reshuffle amid the vacuum. But whispers murmur, does this herald unity reborn, or a Western fracture tipping toward Asia? As Carney's echoes fade, one wonders, will Trump's exit birth a bolder world, or unleash unchecked storms? You'll never guess what happens next. The air was thick with unease as the G7 summit unfolded in Alberta, Canada. It marked a crucial moment for global diplomacy, a moment when uncertainty held sway, and nations teetered on the edge of change. With President Donald Trump's abrupt exit casting a shadow over proceedings, a void emerged that Canada was quick to fill. Prime Minister Mark Carney leapt into action, ushering in a new era of collaboration that could redefine power dynamics on the stage of international politics. What could have led to such a swift reshaping of alliances? Could this be the dawn of a world where reliance on the United States is merely a relic of the past? Carney wasted no time asserting Canada's role, signaling a shift in the geopolitical landscape. In a bold move, he signed a defense pact with South Korea, an agreement that whispered of integrated military partnerships and spoke volumes about Canada's readiness to step into a leading role. As the summit progressed, tensions crackled in the air. The meeting illustrated a palpable shift, one where traditional powers struggled to maintain their grip. Carney's remarks about U.S. protectionism resonated loudly. We should not succumb to nostalgia during transformative times. His words hinted at a broader discontent that simmered beneath the surface. Simultaneously, Canada unveiled its ambitious plans for Latin America. By unveiling loan guarantees totaling $544 million for various development projects, Carney's government transformed into a beacon of hope. What would happen to those areas left in limbo by U.S. funding cuts? As the world watched with bated breath, could Canada's renewed commitment potentially reshape the narrative of foreign aid? Yet, within these seismic shifts lay obstacles. The negotiation window for economic security was a ticking clock, and how Canada would navigate these murky waters remained uncertain. As observers scrutinized Ottawa's moves, the question loomed, could Canada truly forge its path without the guiding hand of the U.S.? In another twist, Carney's strategy also sparked conversations among the world's powers. France and Japan eyed Canada's approach, intrigued by the potential for alternative funding models that could enhance their own global positioning. The echo of Trump's unpredictable tariffs loomed large, pushing nations closer together, while creating fissures in traditional alliances. Would this burgeoning unity prove resilient enough to withstand the impending challenges ahead? As the summit drew to a close, a surge of ambition coursed through the Canadian delegation. They had seized the moment, but the pivotal question remained: would the alliances forged in this crucible of uncertainty hold, or would they fracture under pressure? The palpable energy in the press room hinted at the likelihood of significant change, a significant chapter written in the annals of global diplomacy. Now, only time would reveal the legacy of this historic gathering. Canada had shattered the old US-centered framework, with Carney boldly declaring readiness to champion their negotiating edge, no matter what. Who could have imagined such a shift? Feel the chill of Alberta's towering peaks, the crisp air whispering secrets of change, as Ottawa eyed a future beyond American dominance. Picture the pressure in that mountaintop hall, papers rustling under bright lights, tensions simmering like unresolved storms. In the shadows of uncertainty, no one truly knew if tariff disputes would yield to a sweeping deal. Would the United States retreat from barring steel and aluminum shipments? Or would Canada unleash countermeasures, tools sharpened for defense? Yet, ponder this shocking turn: might the White House itself face a global reckoning it never saw coming? The final meeting, framed by Alberta's rugged majesty, revealed something profound. Ottawa was quietly crafting visions of worlds where power gleams in new directions, far from Washington's fading grasp. Imagine the symphony of murmurs in the press room, as journalists packed up, notebooks filled with riveting tales. Whispers echoed through marble corridors. When the key players vanish, the sidelines rush in, seizing control. What hidden forces lurked beneath such prophetic words? The Alberta gathering embodied that very drama, a trial run in the grand theatre of power. Nations mirroring Canada's bold stance, now poised to bridge the voids left by an introspective America. If this pattern persisted, Carney's stark warning would resound more fiercely: nostalgia as a relic. Unfit for an era brimming with transformation. A seismic upheaval loomed, didn't it? As fragile alliances cracked under the weight of looming threats. But then, an explosive revelation: Trump wasn't merely disrupting, he was engineering a secret pivot to ally with old adversaries. Could isolation blind the giant, forcing a humiliating backdown that redefined the global order forever? The aroma of mountain pine mingled with sweat of anxious diplomats, heralding not just change, but a cataclysmic rebirth. What if this marked the end of hegemony, and the dawn of true multipolar chaos? Feel the electric crackle in the air, the unexpected betrayal stabbing like a hidden blade, reshaping destinies in an instant. The world watched, hearts pounding, as geopolitical tides surged, unpredictably, irrevocably, into the abyss.